All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. As always, we're going to talk a little Wimbledon, and then we're going to bring in our friend Brad Thomas to talk about Euro 2024 and the Copa America. But Drew, let's get stuck into the Wimbledon quarterfinals. With still some action ongoing at the moment. Novak Djokovic playing Holger Rune, though that one is effectively over. The money line's been turned off on Novak, who looks in ominous form. But let's start on the women's side, which is complete chaos. Everyone is losing. There is no Iga Swiatek, obviously no Arena Sabalenka. Ons Jabeur is out as well, finalist past 2 years for anyone who didn't know. And what we are left with, let's start with Donna Vekic and Lulu Sun. In the first quarterfinal, we're going to hit Vekic minus 275, Sun plus 220. Do you have any bet on this one?
Well, let me just kind of off the top say Wimbledon's been a disaster. Not from a betting standpoint, I'm doing fine, but just from like an entertainment standpoint, like these are rough matches, and this has not been especially high quality, and the rain delays and just in general, kind of the lack of high quality matches and big kind of interesting storylines is really kind of dragging this tournament down. I know the men's tournament hasn't really started. We knew there were only 3 or 4 guys who had a realistic shot to win, and none of them have played each other yet. So still a long way to go before we get to the business end of the men's side. But the women's has just been wild. The Coco Gauff loss yesterday in particular, that hurt. And it felt entirely self-inflicted. Like through the first 5 games, she was clearly the better player, and then just got down on herself and couldn't find the answers, and was turned into an unforced error machine off the forehand wing, which was incredibly uncharacteristic of everything else I've seen from her of late. So that stunk, because this was obviously like everything is broken right for her to make a final here and potentially win her first Wimbledon. And now you look at the draw and everything stands like everybody's just going to get out of Rybakina's way, I guess. I know Ostapenko is still, probably playing the best tennis of anyone I've seen so far in this draw, but expecting her to kind of continue to carry that and just kind of stay level-headed and cool in the face of challenges coming up. I'm asking a lot there, but Penko's my last runner, and trying to handicap these remaining quarterfinals is going to be tough, man. Donna Vekic is she is mountains more experience at this type of level. Lulu Sun, it kind of came out of nowhere. She defeated Emma Raducanu. It was a worthy win. She was the better player that day, but Raducanu really just brought absolutely nothing to the table for huge stretches of that match. It looked like she was distracted by all the sideshow of Andy Murray's retirement and her pulling out of mixed doubles and blah blah blah. Like, it really was a kind of a disappointment that she didn't give a better effort in her round 4 match. But Lulu Sun was awesome. She was aggressive. She hit some absolutely outstanding winners. That said, Donna Vekic is the much better player on grass by my numbers, and just in general more experienced at this level. It's been a while since we've seen Vekic anywhere close to her peak. Her peak probably was Australian Open 2023, I guess. And it's been sort of a 1.5 to 2 year decline from where she was at her best. But you need to be lucky to have a chance at a Grand Slam. And we saw Marketa Vondrousova do it last year, where everybody just kind of got out of her way. And it feels to me like Vekic is the player on the bottom with the best chance to get to the final, just based on experience. And to a degree, having some class on grass in the past. Like, this is not a completely unexpected performance for her. And she has beaten some decent competition to get here, whereas Lulu Sun comes through qualifying like, yep, she's clearly, she's confident. She's not not rattled by the moment, but I don't think she has the grass court high enough quality to take on a player like Vekic, who's has won, gone to a final this year, lost to Diana Schneider in Bad Homburg on grass, and just in general, like, has always shown an affinity for playing well on this surface. In 2022, she lost in round 1 to Jess Pegula at Wimbledon, but prior to that, she had a really, really decent run through Birmingham and then Eastbourne. So, there are bright spots on her resume that give me enough hope that she's going to be able to pull off this quarterfinal victory and head on to the semifinals. And price is not like super interesting to me at minus 275. But my fare on this one is close to 300. So if I'm going to have a bet, I'm going to try to find a way into Vekic straight sets or Vekic handicap, just because of, again, like Lulu Sun, congratulations. But, she's really overperformed at this point in the tournament.
Okay, so you think Vekic is more likely to reach the final than Navarro? Because Vekic there's some plus 850 about I'm seeing on her to win it all, whereas Navarro is like shorter than half that price. So you think that's wrong?
Yeah, no, I don't think either has a realistic chance against Rybakina or Ostapenko in the final. But yes, I think Vekic, for me, is going to be the more likely player. And it's tricky because part of my reasoning is I give Paolini a real shot against Navarro in this quarterfinal. Sure. I think that should be closer to a pick'em, and I think Vekic is the more likely semifinalist of those three women, the most likely of those three women. But that said, Vekic is going to be a small dog to Navarro, and maybe a pick'em against Paolini. So the futures pricing makes reasonable sense to me. I just I would lean Vekic, and again, like, none of these women have really ever, outside of Paolini this year, none of them have ever sort of put their stamp on a tournament at this quality, at this level, and really made a run. So it's tough to really find hope or reason that this isn't just going to be more chaos on the bottom here.
Okay, so maybe the bet is taking the no side of Navarro plus 350. If that seems like, if you're going to be adding up the way that you're pricing it, and that she's going to be likely a big dog in the final, most likely against Rybakina. She'd be a dog to Ostapenko as well, I'm presuming. So maybe that's the best play.
Yeah, if it's Rybakina Navarro final, it's going to be something like Rybakina minus 400. If it's Ostapenko Navarro final, it's going to be something like minus 250. My numbers are probably going to say bet the favorite in both of those. I know that I've had a soft number on Navarro for a long time. Like, I've never looked at her more, other than against Osaka, ironically, which was my biggest win of Wimbledon to this point. I've never looked at the Navarro number compared to mine and been like, that's betting value. So clearly I'm behind here on kind of correctly rating her game. And like, I watched almost every point of that Coco Gauff Navarro, and Navarro was just kind of cool and didn't make the mistakes. I didn't really see anything that I was like, whoo, wow, yikes, my goodness. Like, when you watch Ostapenko on grass right now, her form looks incredible. When you've seen Rybakina play at her close to her peak, this year, and in particular, on grass in the past, there are wow moments, and Navarro is just, they're not there, and she's kind of getting by just being cool, calm, collected, and when everybody else is feeling the stress of, holy smokes, I might actually win this tournament, that's enough. But from what I'm seeing so far, I think being against Navarro is a fine place to be right now.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's jump to the men's side. Any bets for you in these quarterfinal matchups?
Man, these are now we're talking. Like, this is getting interesting. This is getting good. And I have thought long and hard about pulling the trigger on both of the dogs tomorrow against Sinner and Alcaraz, even though I think both of those players are going to ultimately move on. And the more interesting one to talk about is surely the Alcaraz match, because of the history between Tommy Paul and Carlos in particular. There is a rich history here. And in general, Alcaraz is an absolute enigma to price right now. Like, toughest thing to do in tennis betting is come up with a fair price on Alcaraz, because you watch some of the matches, and I'll point specifically at the end stages of the Tiafoe match and the fourth set of the Ugo Humbert match, and you saw a player to that point in the match who was struggling, who was lost, who was winning, but not convincingly, and really not producing any kind of magic. And then bang, high leverage game, break points that would force a fifth, tiebreak points that he needed to force the fifth, and all of a sudden he just produced absolute magic. And it was vintage stuff. It was stuff you saw when he was at his best in last year's run. And what I can kind of glean from all this is that he does have the kind of top level, the ceiling of the game that we remember from, when he was the best player in the world, Indian Wells through Wimbledon of 2023. It's still there, but for whatever reason, either he is metering it, or he just doesn't have the health to be able to produce it consistently. He's saving it for the big points, the big moments. And that makes it very, very tough to come up with a fair price, because he's going to get himself in trouble in this Tommy Paul match. Tommy Paul is playing with all the confidence in the world. He had a little bit of a wobble earlier in this tournament, where it looked like he just was kind of running out of gas on grass in general. But he righted the ship, and he has gotten to this point, fairly cleanly after that one wobble. And again, I referenced the history. These players have played 4 times in the span where Alcaraz was, his current form, in his greatest, or in his peak form. And Tommy Paul beat him twice when nobody else really could. Both of those happened to be in Canada on hard court, and he lost the Miami Masters and the Cincinnati Masters on hard court to Alcaraz. But it's a fairly even matchup as you look across those 5, with the exception of the Miami 2023 win for Alcaraz, where he was a better player then than he is now. And, he did dominate Paul in that matchup. But this should be even. This should be close. I think it goes 5. And I think Alcaraz is definitely flirting with, getting upset here if he produces the same quality tennis we've seen in the last couple rounds. So for me, I'm into overs. I'm into Paul in 5 sets. And I'm taking some of the Paul plus games as just a means of trying to capture a little bit of value here on the dog. The current market price, which is giving you Tommy Paul close to 3 to 1, is pretty favorable for my numbers. I think this should be closer to 2 to 1.
Okay. Yeah, I remember losing a lot of money on Alcaraz when he lost to Tommy Paul in Canada like 2 years ago, where Alcaraz just like totally melted, and then had like a social media thing or something where he talked about how, this is the first time I've ever melted, basically, and then bounced back from that to win the US Open. But yeah, it's strange where when you watch, like I watched the last couple sets of Alcaraz against Tiafoe, and it's like, how is this gone 5? Like, what's happening? Why does he do this? And he's had a habit of doing this his entire career, where like that run that I mentioned where he went to win the US Open, he went 5 sets against Tiafoe in that. He went 5 sets against Sinner, despite like seemingly completely outplaying him. He nearly went 5 sets against Casper Ruud in that final. But was able to, I think, pull it out in 4 from memory. So it is a weird aspect to his game where perhaps he's just not as refined in his game to be as efficient as possible, the way that peak Djokovic has been. But yeah, it doesn't seem like he's physically fully comfortable. And I think that the Zverev French Open final was maybe the best representation of that, where when it came to money time, Alcaraz took the money off the table, but he went 5 and he was very vulnerable and went through stretches where just doesn't seem to be playing with the same power and same level of confidence in his ground strokes. But I don't know, it's a very strange one. So Alcaraz now in the live market, as I'm looking at it, he has drifted to being the 3rd favorite for Wimbledon, with Djokovic's price kind of collapsing after this impressive performance against Rune. So now Jannik Sinner is the favorite, clearly at plus 160. And then you have Djokovic, I'm looking at plus 230, Alcaraz plus 260. Do you have a favorite bet of those 3? And is there any long shot that is any chance?
No. I do think though, like Tommy, so let's kind of game this out. Tommy Paul gets by Alcaraz. I think it's possible. Does he beat Sinner? No. I don't think so. Tommy Paul does the impossible and beats Sinner, or Medvedev beats Sinner, and Tommy Paul and Medvedev are playing each other. Do either of those players have a chance to beat Djokovic? I don't think so. I don't think De Minaur, despite his very, very strong performance on grass so far this season, he tends to completely melt when he gets up to elite competition like a Djokovic. So that's probably not going to be much of a match. And Taylor Fritz, while very impressive today and coming back against Zverev, he had a clear physical advantage in that match. Taking it to 5, like he could have gotten that a little bit more cleanly, considering what you saw in the first 2 sets that Zverev won. Like the scoreboard didn't really represent that was like Fritz all the way, I thought. And he eventually just made that longer and harder than it had to be. But I think he beats Musetti pretty comfortably. He's a rightfully heavy favorite in that market as we look at kind of opening early numbers there. And Djokovic should be something like -500 against De Minaur once we see that pop. So it's probably going to be Djokovic over Fritz. I'll say 3-1. And then I think Djokovic gets popped in the final against Sinner this time. And it's kind of felt like that was coming for the last couple of weeks. And I have a little bit of Sinner in pocket, but I'm kind of fine letting the market really get worked up about how good Djokovic looks, and he looks fine and blah, blah, blah. He's not playing as elite competition as he's going to have in that final. And I will forever remember what Sinner looked like in the semifinals against Djokovic on his court in Melbourne. And it was one-way traffic Sinner, and I could very well see that happening again on center court this Sunday. So I'm going to keep my powder dry. I hope the market gets excited about Djokovic to the point where you get an imbalanced price and you can bet on the best player in the world right now, in my opinion, and Jannik Sinner in the final at a favorable bet, and then take some of the exotic stuff like Sinner 3-0. Like that's probably going to be the most fun bet the bet that I'm most excited to make from now to the end of Wimbledon.
Okay. Yeah. I've still got some questions about Yannick. He's won one Grand Slam title. Djokovic allegedly had an injury concern, right, in the Australian Open when Sinner knocked him out, and then was fine in the final, but perhaps not quite the made man in these big matches that Djokovic obviously has been historically, and even that Alcaraz, I'm not sure he has the same established level of being a killer, although he is playing the best tennis of anyone in the world right now. That seems fairly undeniable. All right. Before we bring in Brad Thomas, tune in and watch the toughest cycling race of the year. Today through June 21st, the world's top cyclists compete for a chance to wear the yellow jacket in the Tour de France. Stream it on Peacock. All right. Bradley Thomas of PGA Tour outright fame. Brad is coming off hitting his 7th of the season when Davis Thompson won the John Deere Classic. I've also been told that Brad's nickname was Turtle at one point in time, which I want to make sure everyone is aware of publicly. How's it going, Brad?
Going pretty good. Yeah, you're right. I am super stoked about Davis Thompson winning John Deere Classic. I stink so much at betting these birdie fests. And so I had a pretty limited card. I think like 3 golfers on it. And Davis Thompson was my absolute favorite. He was my write-up in the NBC.com website. And it was just amazing that he made it stress-free. He went out in 29. I was just chilling, sitting at the pool, watching it on my phone. It felt so nice.
Credit to you for watching that.
Very good. All right. Well, let's get off the links and onto the pitch to talk about the Euro Semifinals. The Euros have been, I think, a fairly compelling tournament to date. I like when you have the big teams in the semifinals. A Switzerland-Turkey semi wouldn't have done much for me. I'm a big proponent of I want to see the Yankees and the Cowboys go deep in the playoffs. I want to see the big teams, better storylines. And we have Spain v France and England against the Netherlands. Very evenly matched in the market. Spain are -130 to advance against France, who have not been very impressive so far. And Kylian Mbappe is dealing with some health concerns. And then England, who have also been extremely unimpressive, they are -130 to advance against the Netherlands. Spain is your favorite to win Euro 2024. They will be favored in the final, almost certainly, regardless of the opposition. And then England's +250, France +275, Netherlands +450. What bets do you have on the semifinals, Brad?
Yeah, so in the first game, I went ahead and I took a different approach. I don't think it makes sense to take Spain or to take France outright to win. While France have struggled to score goals, they haven't conceded one single goal from open play. The only goal they allowed was a Lewandowski penalty kick. And that's pretty much the MO of Didier Deschamps. We also have to remember the Spanish side has some yellow card concerns where guys are out due to yellow card accumulation. I think this is going to be low scoring, but as you see, the total is absurd. You can't play it. One bet that I like, and I think a lot of people are going to get down with this when I tell them, this French team, they know they're going to be overmatched when it comes to open play, right? They're not going to create a lot of opportunities. They don't have that prolific passer in the midfield like a Paul Pogba, like they used to have to get balls into Kylian Mbappe. So they're going to concede a lot of possession. They're going to concede a lot of shots because to them, they're going to have guys like William Saliba in the back line who are going to hold it down for them. They're going to have guys in the middle of the pitch like N'Golo Kante, who's going to make sure you don't get into dangerous areas. What does that mean in terms of a betting perspective or an angle that I like? I like Spain to win the first half corner handicap. France are going to concede, like I said, possession, shots, and crosses, which means they're likely going to lose that cap.
That has been sort of part of the DNA of the way that the French are defending so far. This tournament is conceding 1 billion corners. Now their goaltending and their defense has stood up to the test. And so if you have an advantage and you feel like that you want to play it that way, so be it. But the 11-4 corner advantage for Portugal in a game where I thought, France was just absolutely dominant defensively again. That's a really fun handicap. Do you, in general, do you generally get the sense that France is a little bit of a, I don't know if the right word is sleeping giant, but if they're a little bit like, who cares if we haven't played our best? Like, we've gotten to this point and our defense is working. Like, if they get a goal early in this one, or if they find an advantage, how will that change sort of the style of play? Is there a live bet to be made on Spain if they find themselves down 1-0, or do you think that they can park le bus and get through with like a 1-0 win?
If they go up 1-0, I'm going on the other side with corners. I'm taking Spain corners. I'm taking live shots where you can find on something like a FanDuel where you take like Danny Olmo, guys who are going to be shooting a ton. I think to answer your question, I think France are okay with them not playing well, but knowing they have the ability to explode at some point. Like if you watch their last match, who was it? Camavinga had an opportunity to crack the scoring open, and then that changes the complexity of the game because at times Portugal were basically just walking the ball up the pitch, taking their time. Their line was so high. Well, it's different when you have to play with a sense of urgency when you're down 1-0. So for them, I know they're going to hang their hats on playing stout defense, but one goal by either side early in this match changes the complexion. And that's when you really start licking your chops as a sports bettor because live betting angles are there.
Yeah, I'll say on the live betting front, I had a bet on France to advance against Portugal live at -115, -120 when Portugal took off Bruno Fernandes and João Cancelo, and then France had brought on Ousmane Dembele, and then they had the complete run of play. And I think there's a kind of sense, or you regress to the idea that it's a Euro 2024 quarterfinal, even live, this is going to be a really liquid and tough to beat market. Well, you can kind of appraise liquidity by just the gaps in the market's pricing. And like France at that point, some spots they were -155, other spots they're -120. So someone's clearly wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're, live betting is the one area where if you're just watching the game and watching it unfold, you can develop an edge where it's much harder to do that with pre-match, which is, shaped by so much liquidity. But I will say, having placed that wager on France, I was extremely unimpressed with what they served up after that, as I was needing them to win, because as soon as it got to extra time, they kind of parked the aforementioned boost, as you alluded to, Drew, and they really couldn't create anything. And I thought on balance of play, they probably deserved to lose against Portugal, which is a problem because I don't think Portugal are that amazing. And now they come up against the Spain team, who I think have they've definitely been the most impressive of the remaining four teams. Brad, do you think the fact that Spain are going to be down personnel through yellow cards, through Pedri's injury, his MCL. Do you think that is going to really hinder them against France, or do you think that they have, replacements like Dani Olmo who should be able to carry the load?
I think they're going to have replacements, but I also think it's going to change the complexity of the match, right? But the good thing for them is when Dani Olmo comes into the game, I don't think it's that much of a drop off, right? Like Pedri to Dani Olmo, in my opinion, in terms of how they can impact the game, it's a different impact of the game, but I think their impact can still heighten them to a level that is similar to that we're playing throughout. But I will say this, Jay, and I think a lot of people need to know this. France had a pretty fortunate run to this tournament in terms of who they played. Like, it's not like they were playing a bunch of world beaters and looking great doing it. They played some teams who pretty much I was betting goal handicaps against them. So I think it's not going to be as easy as a lot of people are saying, where they're like, oh, Spain is just so dominant compared to everyone. Now they're playing really good teams and the matches are going to continue to be tough.
Okay. Wrap just off the top of your head. No detailed thought.
Yep.
Either France or Spain wins Euro 2024. Does the player of the tournament come? Who is the player of the tournament for each of these squads?
One of the teams will win this. I think one of these teams will win the Euro. Keeper for France, probably player of the tournament for me. I had a little small wager on him pre-tournament because I thought he was going to keep the most clean sheets, and I couldn't bet keeper of the tournament, golden glove, whatever they call it. They didn't have that market.
I have it.
So,
I don't think they award it.
Yeah. They had it last Euro and they didn't have it this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was really weird. And on the Spanish side, it's tough.
It is.
Give it to Carvajal. He's been pretty nice.
He's not going to play. The issue is in the semi.
Well, if he plays in the final, I'm saying.
Yeah, he could bounce. I mean, Rodri is the heavy favorite for Spain. I guess he's the default winner, but I mean, you could argue that Fabian Ruiz, the guy who plays next to him, has been better than Rodri this tournament.
Yes.
I would strongly argue that.
Fabian Ruiz shots too have been really, really nice. If you're looking for another betting angle, he's been firing at will.
I also think that like Nico Williams is like 3 times Lamine Yamal's price. I don't think they've been the same level of player to me. I think that winner will largely get shaped by how the players perform over the next 2 games if they go on to win it. I think on France's side, like it is just wide open. And the way that I would advise people to think about this kind of market is like who has the pathway to like rapidly gaining equity in the market for their team. And like William Saliba and N'Golo Kante, like it's kind of hard for them to, have all world really loud performances and gain equity really quickly because, Saliba's a central defender and N'Golo Kante is a defensive midfielder. They kind of just exist and they do their thing. And it's not really like loud viral clips of N'Golo Kante tracking back really well or William Saliba clearing header. I still look at it and see like France are plus 275 to win the Euros and Kylian Mbappe is 15-1 to win player of the tournament. And I understand that he hasn't been good so far, but he's like plus 230 anytime goal scorer in the semifinal. He has a broken nose. Like he can still run. He can still, it's not like he's hindered in a way physically where he can't make an impact. So I would just, that to me doesn't cohere when you just project forward that for them to win the tournament. And the winner of that award has gone to the team that has won the tournament every single year for the past 30 years or whatever, outside of 2016, when Antoine Griezmann won, and he was just so far ahead of everyone else. The tournament was in France too, and Portugal just had no standout player. They won because Ronaldo got hurt like 10 minutes into the final or whatever. So you're looking for a player who is on the winning team. I think it is very clear as well that the voting is done after the final concludes, which isn't always the case in these type of awards, because the reason I would say that is because Donnarumma won last year and he had no case whatsoever until the penalty shootout had concluded. So I think it's definitely done afterwards. And that also lends itself more likely that a player on the winning team will actually win the award. So I still think that Mbappe should be the favorite for France, even though he hasn't been great so far.
Yeah, I agree. And you pretty much touched on what I was going to say about Donnarumma. I took Donnarumma to win player of the tournament. I believe I came on this podcast and talked about it. And my whole thought process was, how is the final going to go? How do Italy win it? They're not going to score from open play. It's going to have to be from PKs. If he stands on his head in PKs and saves 1 or 2, it's going to be his title to win.
Yep. No. Yep. No, that was a strong handicap, and it may well go that way again with France's keeper Mike Mannion, who's had a really strong tournament. Again, though, it's like he's going to have to keep clean. Well, it's not that hard to do. He may keep a clean sheet in the final or be a hero in the shootout.
Yeah.
And the way France has been playing, that might be their path to victory. I always like betting on goalkeepers and goaltenders in hockey for these type of awards, just because their performance is so incredibly correlated with the team's success. Like, if Mike Mannion wins, a big chunk of that is going to have to be keeping a clean sheet. Well, if they keep a clean sheet, they're probably going to win. Fairly simple. Just last quick thought, because we haven't talked about it much. Brad, who goes through out of England and the Netherlands, and why?
England goes through. Netherlands still have some issues that they have to work out. We talk about how bad Southgate ball has been, but they've scored 5 goals in open play, which is a lot more than France. I know we have to talk about those two are the 2 big name powerhouses that we've been talking about. Netherlands are okay, just not getting quality looks, if that's the right way to say it. Cody Gakpo has been doing phenomenal, but Memphis Depay is pretty much, no offense, a waste of space on there. They could put literally someone else in and probably provide more of a spark for that team.
Oh, okay. Keep sleeping on us. Nobody believes in us. The orange, orange.
Yeah.
All right, got it. I think I got it right.
L'orange. That would be more Le Boost territory.
I'll tell you what. Hey, for like 10 minutes in that game against Turkey, they looked pretty good.
Yeah, for 10 minutes. And that Turkey, like, Netherlands should have just busted that game wide open. They couldn't get anything going in that first half. I know the crowd played a massive part in that, but it was just a total letdown performance. I was also mad because I took Cody Gakpo golden boot, and they called that own goal. I was on a golf course celebrating with my homies. I go, we have 3 now, and all of a sudden they changed it. That was painful.
Yeah, no, that was a tough one. Even Fabrizio Romano got the tweet out about Gakpo scoring his 4th or whatever it was, and then sadly, no longer the case. Though he is the one guy, like you talk about player of the tournament. He's the only guy who is like, he is their team's equity. Like Cody Gakpo will win player of the tournament, barring something absolutely obscene. Whereas the other 3 teams fairly wide open. All right. Before we get to the Copa America, Friday, July 26th, marks the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games in Paris. Watch Simone Biles and more elite American athletes compete for gold on NBC and Peacock. All right, let's talk about these Copa semi-finals. We have Argentina v Canada, shockingly, and then Uruguay against Colombia. As you'd expect, Argentina a fairly heavy favorite, minus 550, despite really possibly should have just gone out against Ecuador had Ecuador scored in the final minute of stoppage time in the quarterfinal. And then you have Uruguay, Colombia, which is effectively a pick. Uruguay, the slightest of favorites. Any bets for you in these 2 matches, Brad?
Yeah, in the first one, Argentina versus Canada, I'm going to bet this. I bet this in the first time they played in this tournament. Argentina minus 1.5. Now we're getting a better price, and I think it's going to be tactically different from the Canadians here. If you watched that match, the match day 1 match in the group stages, Canada played kind of free and open, but it's different. It's a big difference between group play when you're playing open and free versus a semifinal match where you're going to play a little compact. I also believe that Argentina, their play style is going to play into the hands of this bet, where the Canadians, most of their defensive firepower is out on the wings. Argentina like getting you wide, playing the ball from out to in, and that's where Canada's weakness is in the middle of the pitch.
Okay, fair enough. The real question for me in Copa America is, will the winner of Uruguay, Colombia, probably Colombia, will they make a match of the final with Argentina? Do you have a general thought there?
I think if Colombia advance, they lose to Argentina, especially if it goes to PKs. If Uruguay advance, they beat Argentina. I think they can beat them in open play, but I also think they can beat them in PKs as well.
Ooh,
okay,
that's a spicy take.
Yeah, it is interesting that Colombia, everyone kind of acknowledges they've been the best team in the tournament. What are they, like 27 games unbeaten at this point?
25, I believe.
Yeah, and they're still underdogs against the Uruguay team that I guess, did what they needed to do against Brazil, but wasn't ultra impressive in a game that was completely devoid of impression from either side. Even though that is not the extension of the word impressive, I'm going to use it at this point. Any other bet for you, Brad, on the Copa in any market before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm just going to put this one parlay out there. I parlayed Uruguay double chance. That means if they win or they draw, that leg wins. And Darwin Nunez 3+ shots. He's hit that in every game. I believe Uruguay will be a little bit more aggressive in this match, but I still think it's going to be fairly boring, quote unquote, as the Americans call a 1-1 or a 0-0 match.
Yes, boring and tactical is the other synonym there. All right, don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. And thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Thanks again very much to Brad Thomas for joining us. Thanks to Drew Dinsick as well and his sensational French pronunciations of various things. I am Jay Croucher, and we'll see you next time.